Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes as we react to the governor's budget address. First and foremost, we want to thank the governor for addressing the General Assembly today, and we also want to thank the governor for recognizing that working families and our individual citizens cannot afford to pay any more dollars in additional taxes as he's proposed in the past. Obviously, there's some areas that we're encouraged with the governor's budget address today, particularly the focus on career and technical education and workforce development and training our young folks for jobs that are going to exist in the future. There are other areas that we've got a great deal of concern with. I think anytime you're proposing $1 billion increase in spending, there's a lot of questionable components to that we think will lead to future tax increases in the future. So I think that's going to be one of the core areas our Appropriations Committee looks at in the upcoming months as we look to begin the process in the upcoming weeks of putting together a final budget document that represents not just the priorities of the House Republican Caucus and the Senate Republican Caucus, but all Pennsylvanians. We want a responsible budget that spends only the dollars who are coming in to our citizens, to our Commonwealth, to our state's coffers, but also does an effective job of actually meeting the core functions of government that our citizens expect on a daily basis. Areas like education, public safety, infrastructure, addressing the opioid epidemic, and not just addressing them in traditional ways, but also being willing to look outside the box and look at different areas in different ways of reinventing and re-envisioning what our government should look like in the future. We look forward to beginning that process in earnest with our colleagues across the Capitol and across the aisle in the upcoming weeks and getting to a final budget document in a timely fashion. I'd now like to turn it over to my colleague, Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman.
Thanks, Dick. Very brief. I guess the old adage is the governor proposes and the legislature disposes. We appreciate the blueprint that the governor laid out here today. And I hope everyone appreciated the Republican response in the chamber, unlike what we saw in the minority response in D.C., although I was practicing my Nancy Pelosi look all week. No, it was very respectful. The governor laid out a nice agenda. There will be areas where we disagree. There's no question. One of the disappointing parts, I think, of the announcement was when he proposed the severance tax, he did not propose the permitting reform, which was part of the agreement last year, one that his own Democratic caucus in the House, if I recall the debate last year, did not support. So I think it's highly unlikely, despite his encouragement, that will get accomplished this year. I don't suspect you'll see any increases, and that is an increase on Pennsylvania families, by the way. But I don't see any increases in new revenue this year, so we will have to roll up our sleeves and reduce this spend. The governor, as I said, as Representative Reed said, proposed over $1 billion in new spending, and then didn't address a lot of things like higher education to our state-related universities, our community colleges. We're left behind again as well. Those kids are paying tuition increases, and if we're not going to address those, then those tuition increases will continue to grow. So there are a lot of other areas as well that the governor didn't address that we have traditionally addressed in the past. So when we go about trying to put that back together, we're going to have to find a significant amount of reductions in spend that he proposed here today. But this is the beginning. The governor laid out a nice address for us, laid out a blueprint for us, but we will begin our process. Senator Brown and Representative Saylor will begin their hearing process, and hopefully we can bring this to a conclusion, who knows, maybe in May instead of June or October or November. I think the spirit is there, but it will be a challenge. This is not going to be an easy one just because of the overspend that the governor proposed here today, but one that we will work diligently on to bring in on time. With that, let me turn it over to our Appropriations Chairman, Senator Pat Brown.
Thank you, Jake. Two most important numbers to remember as we start: 1.5 billion and 40 million. 1.5 billion is where we started the conversation last year. $1.5 billion deficit started last year. We're starting with a projected $40 million surplus for 18-19 in the governor's financial statement. The only thing that can put that at risk right now, as we try to pull ourselves into more fiscal stability, is overspending, is being too aggressive in how much we're actually spending of the receipts that what we're seeing are turning around. The way that we've been able to balance that with setting stress over the last 10 years is to keep spending at an average rate of 1.2%. increase over 10 years. The governor had said that part of his achievement is to keep the spending in the range of a $2 billion increase over his tenure. The difference is, based on his proposals, we would be $7 billion higher in spending than we are now. That continuous rate of increase, notwithstanding the good things that are in there that a lot of us think are worthy in education and intellectual disabilities, we have to find ways to continue to keep our spending rates at the places they've been over the last 10 years. That's been the accomplishment of this General Assembly. We are looking at hopefully more positive times financially. Our numbers dictate that relation to where we started last year. But if we put ourselves out and fly at 300,000 feet with a 3.7%, 4% increase in spending, we're only putting ourselves at greater risk to end up back there again. The other piece of this budget we have to be really concerned about. Across America, the corporate community is reacting unbelievably to the federal tax changes that happened in Washington. First time in a generation you've seen that much additional cash that corporations have because of the rate adjustment from 35% to 21%. We don't want to be the ones without a chair when the music stops. And that is when the cash is invested, we want to invest it here. We don't even want to invest in every other state that's going to follow the federal law. The governor's office right now, with all due respect, is competing for the worst state in the country to respond to the federal law. Almost every single provision that leads to investment, lower rates, 100% expensing, reduction of income by small business, they are not including in our conversation at all. If we want some of the huge amount of additional capital to come in Pennsylvania, we have to take that seriously and hope we respond favorably to that significant generational change in federal tax law, which right now the governor has not included at all in his proposal. If we do these things collectively, continue our achievements as a General Assembly as it relates to spending and taxes, we'll be able to make sure that the current trajectory, that positive trajectory of finances that we're seeing, is a reality come June or hopefully earlier. Thank you very much. I will turn it over to Stan Saylor.
Thank you, Senator. As you've seen today in the governor's budget, additional taxes and fee increases, I think we're looking at something that doesn't increase revenues. I think we have to live within our means. Families live within their means every day on how they're paying their mortgage, their car payments, their children's education. We have to, in the General Assembly, get our spending under control. It is important for us to understand, and I'm very happy the governor has finally recognized that we need to invest more money in career and technical education. It is so critical. I hear all the time from employers throughout Pennsylvania that they can't find people to fill jobs they have. I've heard from the mayor of Philadelphia, Mayor Kenny and Mayor Netter before him, that they have 30,000 jobs they can't fill in their cities because of the lack of career and technical education for the people they have there. We need to invest more. The appropriations hearings that we're going to have in the House will be focusing on jobs, 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 and opioids. We're going to ask the secretaries as they come before us whether they are spending tax dollars to achieve those goals. We know we lost 10,000 jobs last year in Pennsylvania. We cannot continue that pace. We have to continue to stay within our means, give employers in Pennsylvania to know that we're not going to end up after the election like they did in 1991 and come back here with another deficit as we had last year. Our goal in the Appropriations Committee and both caucuses, I believe, is to give a reasonable, responsible budget to the people of Pennsylvania and to the business community that they can expect in the future a state government that will help them employ more people and to expand here. Thank you very much. I recognize Speaker Turzai. Oh, there he is.
Thank you very much. It's interesting that once again, the Republicans in the General Assembly are going to have to be the adults in the room. First of all, you have to live within your means. We are not interested in increasing taxes, not just on families, but job-crushing taxes that allow the economy to grow. Clearly, the Trump agenda is having a positive impact in the economy all across the United States of America. But Pennsylvania still lags. 4.7% unemployment in our Commonwealth versus 4.1% in the national average. In addition, as the Senate Appropriations Chair stated, we started off last year's budget with a $1.5 billion deficit, which was completely unnecessary. It was the result of pegging revenues significantly higher than when anybody would expect to come in. And yet we had a growing economy and there was additional revenue. The governor never offered a solution with respect to his deficit and his credit downgrade. It's inexcusable. We are not going to go through those same shenanigans in this budget. It will not be acceptable. We are going to call to task the Revenue Secretary and the Budget Secretary to make sure that the expectations with revenues are exactly where they are, unlike the debacle in 16-17 that the governor created. In addition, we're going to continue to focus on things that matter to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A work requirement, that's crucial with respect to able-bodied individuals on Medicaid. That needs to get back to the governor's desk. We're fine with certain increases in public education, but where's the accountability? What are we looking for to get out of the additional dollars? It's one thing to say you're going to invest in career and technical education, and we have been at the forefront of removing the stigma that allows young men and women to go into those fields. But what are we going to actually ask for of the money that's being appropriated that the governor wants? In addition, are there going to be monies for school choice because one size does not fit all? We certainly believe that in any education array that has to be part of the agenda. There's an opportunity to make Pennsylvania better, focused on jobs, focused on each and every individual in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to be at their best, to make sure that each and every child in Pennsylvania has an opportunity. But the key is we have to have accountability, and we have to set measurements, and we've got to achieve them for the money that we're spending. The citizens of Pennsylvania deserve no less. Thank you.
So I get to speak when all the chanters start. Look, as the governor said, he talked about individuals that signed the front of paychecks. I've been signing the front of a paycheck all my life as a business person. And what I'd like to echo is what Pat Brown had to say and all the other speakers had to say. It is about jobs. It's about the job climate in this state. And there's a wave coming across the country. And that wave is money, reinvestment in all of our factories and all of our job creators. And if we do not, as Pennsylvania, catch that wave, we're going to be left on the sidelines once again. And so, we cannot do anything without a good job climate in Pennsylvania. You're not going to solve poverty without jobs. You're not going to solve our welfare problems without jobs. You're not going to solve the problems that we have with health care without jobs. And so wherever we focus, we want to help those middle class families. We want to help all families get back on their feet. It's with jobs. And so we have to be able to focus on what it takes to catch this wave that's sweeping the nation, because it's real. It's not pretend, and we have to make sure Pennsylvanians have that opportunity and not left behind. And I look forward to working with the governor and all these people here to bring that to a conclusion, and I'd love to bring that to a conclusion in May, everybody. May. Thank you.